Okay, class, picking up where we left off at, we had the cube root of 2m times the cube root of n squared, which would give us the cube root of 2m n squared, and also p, all over. Now, the cube root of np squared times the cube root of n squared p will give us 2np. Now, there's nothing more we could do with this problem, so we're done. Now we scroll down here to the next page. It says radical conjugates. It says radical expressions with the same two terms, but with the opposite sign between them. That's what radical conjugates are. Example, 3 minus the square root of 11, 3 plus the square root of 11 are conjugates. Square root of 15 plus the square root of 17, square root of 15 minus the square root of 17. And they're conjugates. Now, we have the square root example. We want to simplify. We can only simplify by multiplying by the conjugate. So the conjugate would be square root of 5 plus the square root of 3. And we'll multiply that by our numerator and denominator. Our denominator, when you multiply the conjugates, now we are going to do it first using the FOIL method. So we'll take square root of 5 times square root of 5, which will give us the square root of 25. Square root of 5 times the square root of 3, which will give us a positive square root 15. Negative square root of 3 times square root of 5 will give us a negative square root of 15. And negative square root of 3 times a positive square root of 3 will give us a negative square root of 9. In our numerator, we have 7 times the square root of 5 plus 7 times the square root of 3. Now the square root of 25, well, we have 7 square root of 5 plus 7 square root of 3. The square root of 25 we know is 5. The square root of 15 and the minus square root of 15 will simplify out. Minus the square root of 9 is 3. We know 5 minus 3 is 2, so we have 7 square root of 5 plus 7 square root of 3 all over 2. And that is the final answer. Now we come here to B. We still multiply by the conjugate because we have a binomial here. So we have 4 minus the square root of 2 and 4 minus the square root of 2. Now we'll multiply our numerator. 2 square root of 3 times 4 is 8 square root of 3. 2 square root of 3 times the negative square root of 2 will give us a minus 2 square root of 6. All over. Now when you multiply conjugates, you could kind of skip this middle step where it's going to simplify. But remember, you can only do this with a conjugate of a binomial. So you would take the first term times the first term, which is 16. And the second term times the second term, which will give you a minus square root of 4. So this will give us 8 square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 6 all over. This is 16 minus 2. And then this will give us 8 square root 3 minus 2 square root 6 all over 14. Now if you notice here, all three of these terms have 2 in common. So when we simplify this by 2, this will give us 4 square root 3 minus the square root of 6 all over 7. And that is the final answer. Now, we look here. Our conjugate here will be 5 square root x plus 2 over 5 square root x plus 2. Now, when we multiply our numerator, that'll give us 30 square root x plus 12 all over 5 square root of x times 5 square root of x, we know is 25 times square root of x squared. And negative 2 times positive 2 would give us minus 4. So now we have 30 square root x plus 12 all over square root of x squared, we know is x. This would be 25x minus 4. Now, we have nothing in common. And so this is our final answer. Now we come here to problem D here. So we'll multiply by the conjugate, which would be the square root of 2 plus the square root of 6. We'll multiply numerator and denominator by that. So now our denominator, which we know would be kind of easy to get, is to give us the square root of 4 minus the square root of 36 for our denominator. Now our numerator, we're going to have to do the distributive property or the FOIL method. It'll be 3 square root 2 plus 3 square root 6 plus the square root of 10 plus the square root of 30. So now, in our denominator, we'll add 2 minus 6, which we know is negative 4. Now in our numerator, we have no like terms. We had no perfect squares anywhere. So our final answer will be 3 square root 2 plus 3 square root 6 plus the square root of 10 and plus the square root of 30 all over negative 4. So this here would be our final answer. Now we scroll down to the next page. It says the square root example. Let f of x equal 3 times the square root of x minus 5 and g of x equals 4 times the square root of x minus 2. Find the simplified equation for each function. So we got x, well we have f. So we have 3 square root of x minus 5 minus whatever g is. So we would change the sign of everything here in g. So it'd be minus 4 square root x plus 2. Because since that minus sign is here, it changes the sign of everything. So now we combine like terms. 3 square root x minus 4 square root x will give us a negative square root x, or a negative 1 square root x. Negative 5 plus 2 will give us a minus 3. And this right here will be our final answer. Okay, next, we come here to B. We have f divided by g. Now, one thing I have not been doing, and I want to clarify this. When we have f divided by g, or f minus g, that's the same as putting it in parentheses with x. So you know it's really f of x minus g of x. So I write that down as equal to f of x minus g of x. And that's how we substitute it in the values here. Now the same thing for f divided by g of x. So this is the same as f of x divided by or over g of x. So we can write that out. We would have 3 square root x minus 5 all over 4 square root x minus 2. Now the conjugate we know would be 4 square root x plus 2 all over 4 square root x plus 2. So now when we multiply our denominator, we know this would end up giving us 16x minus 4, because we know square root of x and square root of x is x, and 4 times 4 is 16. Now for our numerator, 3 square root x times 4 square root x will give us 12x. 3 square root x times 2 we know will give us a positive 6 root x. Minus 5 times 4 root x will give us a minus 20 square root x. And minus 5 times 2 is minus 10. So we add 12x. 6 times the square root of x minus 20 square root of x is minus 14 square root of x minus 10. All over 16x minus 4. Okay, now if we look here, we could do a little factoring here. All three of these terms have 2 in common. So we have 6x minus 7 square root of x minus 5. These two terms here have 4 in common. Well, we could actually do, let's do 4. They have 4 in common. So this would be 4x minus 1. Now we can simplify this. 2 and 4 both has 2 in common. So our numerator would be 6x minus 7 square root x minus 5. Now our denominator, we know 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. So we could take 2 times 4x minus 1, and that would give us 8x minus 2. And this here is the final answer.